Hello, everyone, and welcome to Biohackers Lab. I'm your host, Gary Kerwin, and on today's episode, I have Ben Greenfield. Ben has a bachelor's and master's degree in sports science and exercise physiology. He has certifications in personal training and strength and conditioning coaching. He is the author of the New York Times best-selling book, Beyond Training, and has been voted as one of the top 100 most influential individuals in health and fitness. Ben, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me on, man. I like your glasses. You know what I call those?
What do you call them?
Birth control for your head.
Okay. Why do you call them birth control for your head?
Because I have yet to ever wear blue light blocking glasses to a party or any other gathering and have anyone walk up to me and tell me how attractive that I look with my creepy red glasses on.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's my problem.
They're highly functional though. They're good for sleep. So there's that.
Yeah, well, you're going to sleep alone. That's basic. They should put that with the glasses. Yeah.
Exactly. They're good for sleep because A, you produce more melatonin, and B, you are highly unlikely to have a partner in bed with you.
There you go. That's the first biohacking tip for relationships. If you want to stay single, wear these glasses.
Yeah, exactly. Built-in contraception.
Ben, with your intro there, that's just a tiny bit of your life, really. I mean, you've done so much in so little time, and it's fascinating. And that's why I wanted to get you on. I mean, you're one of the top biohackers, online and in the world. So I'm so glad that I got a chance to speak to you today. And as I can see, if anyone's watching the YouTube video of this interview, you're exercising and podcasting at the same time.
Well, I'm walking on my walking treadmill, but I have to admit, it irks me when people consider this to be exercising because, if we look at the blue zones, right, these areas of longevity, or higher than normally would be found number of centenarians, in the population, we see very little structured workouts, very little talk of exercise per se, as much as just the sprinkling of low-level physical activity spread throughout the day, right? So I actually don't exercise that much at all, but I move all day long, right? So I consider what I'm doing right now just movement, right? Not exercise, in the same way that, after I talk to you, I'll be lunging or kneeling or standing or leaning against my stool, So I would say that that right now for me, I'm doing what I think should be considered normal among modern humans, which would just be figuring out ways to move during the day. And so, I have all manner of different things scattered about my office to help make that occur, from, balance boards and balance mats to, stools to saddle chairs to this walking treadmill. So yes, I am. It may seem like a subtle semantic difference, but I'm moving. I'm not exercising.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you, man. It's the word exercise is too strong of a word. Movement heals. I've always had the concept of creating fidget desks. So I've never quite liked the idea of just a standing desk because you're stationary. You actually need to fidget. You need to keep moving, stimulating.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, standing is just as bad for you as sitting, really. Granted, standing up regulates lipase, and you're going to see an increase in fat burning activity. You're typically going to see more, small core musculature activation, but you also see varicose veins and hip issues and knee issues and foot issues and low back issues and all sorts of things like that. And people who stand all day too. The trick is to neither sit all day or stand all day, but just to engage in as wide a variety of positions as you can be in during the day,
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. So this has already got me into what I wanted to start our talk with, was your ability to be so productive and also manage your stress, because you get up to so much in a day or a week or a month. It's incredible. So I'd love to sort of just get to know a little bit about Ben Greenfield and how do you stay so productive?
That's always a difficult question for me to answer because, I've always been that way. Part of it probably stemmed from me being homeschooled K through 12 and never really having a standard set for me as far as what limitations should be placed on productivity or should be placed on the way that I structure my day, because I pretty much grew up having to learn how to structure my own days independently, discover knowledge in many cases, and also, determine for myself when I was going to have breaks and when I was going to, perhaps, what we might consider to be, like laze around or, engage in recreational activities. And so I think because of that, when I was young, I would just fill up my entire day with as many interesting activities as possible. And when I was in college, same thing, right? Like I applied every semester to take, 30 credits or, 35 credits instead of the traditional, like 18 to 20, because I was like, well, I'm in college. I'm here to learn. Why shouldn't I just be in classes all day long? And then I'd finish up classes and, I'd go to the gym or do my personal training or work at the bakery or, work at the coffee shop or, hold down any of the 5 to 6 different jobs that I had in college. Cause, for me, work was play, play was work, and I love to learn. And for me now, it's really no different. I fill every waking moment with some kind of you know, an activity that actually has a point, whether that be reading or sauna or, or painting or playing an instrument or doing anything else that really helps me to delve into what I'm personally interested in. And then I'm a complete idiot when it comes to things that really don't move the dial in my life. Like I watch maybe 1 to 2 movies a year. I don't watch any TV. I don't really follow politics. I used to read the newspaper every day, and I quit doing that. So I'm a complete dummy in many areas of life because I've chosen to prioritize the things that I find important. And I simply structure my day so that there aren't a lot of wasted moments, right? It's like they talk about how the UPS drivers over here in the States, like they teach them how to primarily during on their routes when they're delivering packages to always turn right instead of left, right? Because it actually cuts out on a lot of travel time, at least here in a country where we drive on the right side of the road, to always be turning right instead of left, because you're not waiting to, cut across traffic. You usually can go right at a red light, etc. And so I kind of consider my own life to be the same, right? Like, I structure my day so that there's not a lot of wasted time, right? I don't go to the gym. I just have a gym next to my office with my kettlebells and everything. So I never waste time like driving to the gym, driving home, etc. I don't really go to like meetups or coffee meetings or clubs or restaurants that often unless I'm traveling and it's for a specific reason when I travel, because I find that the process of driving somewhere, meeting someone, etc., it takes up far more time than simply hopping on the phone or having a quick chat. I have people who work here in town for me locally who I might even only see like once a month because if we want to have a quick chat, we do it on Slack or send a couple of text messages back and forth, right? So I'm a creature of efficiency, and I also don't waste a lot of time doing things that I just don't feel move the dial in terms of what I enjoy in life, because life's too short to be pulled apart by the latest TV show or something that allows other people to dictate what you're going to do with your time than allow you to dictate with what you're going to do with your time. And then probably another really important thing is that I really do structure my days for both efficiency and also for lack of decision making fatigue, right? So I don't have a lot of dietary variety, or like I eat very similar things for breakfast and for lunch and for any snacks. For breakfast I have my big smoothie, for lunch my big ass salad, for a snack typically some kind of like a little bit of coconut milk with chia seeds or some other form of fat, and then dinner tends to be highly varied for me, but a lot of times it's because my wife or my children are cooking some kind of a meal, not because I'm spending a couple of hours preparing some new dish, right? So I don't think a lot when I sit down to eat. That saves time. I have very efficient exercise habits. Even when I competed in triathlon and now competing professionally in obstacle course racing, I get in and I get out on my workouts very quickly, right? So like this morning's workout was 30-second high intensity bout of hypoxia followed by 30 seconds of hyperoxia using a live O2 oxygen unit that allows you to fluctuate from very little oxygen in the air to high amounts of oxygen in the air. So I'll 10 extremely hard 30-second efforts, 30-second recoveries, followed by 20 minutes in the sauna, doing my yoga, everything, and everything like that. So I'm hitting my cardiovascular performance extremely efficiently, following that up with blood building, finishing that up with a cold shower or a cold soak, and then by doing that, I'm simulating an extremely long endurance workout with less than an hour of training. It's a similar thing when I lift weights. I do a lot of supersets, triple supersets, back-to-back sets, density training, a lot of things that allow me to get in and get out of the gym pretty quickly. So I kind of structure my life for efficiency, but in a way that still allows me to enjoy what I'm doing. And not in a way that makes me feel like I'm just constantly like self-quantifying and sucking all the enjoyment out of life. So, so yeah, just extreme efficiency, I guess. Those are a few things that come to mind when you ask me that question.
Yeah, well, already what I'm hearing from you is just mindset. So you're focused, and you want to achieve certain goals, and so you have the realization that there are these other things that are just trying to distract you in life. And I'm in the same boat as you. I remember back in 2010, I thought I'd do a little experiment to see what it's like to not have a TV just for 30 days or 60 days, just to see, because it's entertainment is such a big, or TV entertainment is such a big part of most people's lives in the Western world. And it was fascinating. So since that day, I've never owned a TV, and most people are blown away when they come to the house and think, "Where's your TV?" And it's like, well, yeah, I don't watch TV, so I don't miss it.
Right. I have a TV, and the main thing I use it for is, as a guy who is immersed in the health and fitness sector, and as a freelance journalist, a lot of times folks will send me things to review on DVD, like workouts to review. And so usually anytime I have for spending in front of the TV, it's to go through some kind of a workout, like a workout DVD. So yeah, that's about it. With one that I recently did was pretty entertaining. It was Diamond Dallas Page, a professional wrestler here in the U.S., has a yoga DVD. So listen to this yoga DVD I was doing. Professional wrestling yoga. The most notable moves of which would be you do your traditional chaturanga, your yoga series, etc. But then when you pop up from it and you bring your arms up overhead, you basically like point your arms up overhead towards the sky, and you go like this. You say, "Superstar."
Love it.
So there you go. Professional wrestling yoga by Diamond Dallas Page. This podcast is brought to you by.
Did he send you a nice little costume of some sort that you had to wear too whilst you had to do it?
No, but I would love to get my hands on a mankini or a unitard or something like that I could wear for that activity. That would step it up a notch for sure.
Yeah. You got to live the role. So get you into it. I love that you brought up the homeschooling part, because I actually homeschool, well, with my wife, of course, our two children. And or just even what you said with your experience of growing up doing homeschooling, did you felt that was a positive experience?
Well, look, I mean, homeschooling can be a positive experience. I have also run into children who are unschooled / homeschooled who have very poor social skills, poor eye contact, seem to have that idea that you can just kind of wear whatever you want and people don't judge you by your looks, which simply isn't true in our day and age, right? You can't walk around with your hair messed up and wearing like a dirty sweatshirt and jeans and torn up shoes and expect not to be judged in a certain way. Like, I think that homeschooling tends to breed someone who is like a lone wolf, who thinks outside the box, who doesn't follow rules well, who is good at sticking it to the man, who is not a good team player, who is not a good factory worker. And there are pros and cons of that, right? Like for me personally, being homeschooled helped me to think outside the box and to attack problems in a very different way, because I simply never learned how to think inside the box. But at the same time, when I got to college, I was very poor at being a team player. I had to micromanage everything. I was poor at delegating. I was poor at playing well with others, right? But I was very good at being a lone wolf and an independent learner and a leader. So I think that because of that, homeschooling can create someone who is perhaps too independent, who doesn't cooperate well enough with others. But I think that can be mitigated or skirted if you do one of two things. Either A, take a child who's homeschooled and expose them to as wide a variety of cooperative social learning situations as you can. Typically that would be sports. That's a very simple way that can be achieved. You homeschool your kid, but you put them into like team basketball or tennis lessons or, team soccer or football or, anything else that really teaches them how to work well with groups, extracurricular activities, so to speak, rather than just having them, being, barefoot at the kitchen table at home. The other thing would be you do, as I started doing after I homeschooled my kids for 3 years, I decided to go this route instead, kind of like the outsourcing route, to where I found a really good private school for my kids where they actually are learning how to be good little factory workers and cooperate well with others and, and learn in a classroom style format. But then when they come home from school, that's not when I assume that they have learned everything that they need to learn and they can just come home and hang out. Instead, I prepare myself in terms of the work that I do during the day and the choices that I make during the day to be done with most of what I have to do by the time my kids get home at 4 p.m. so that I can then begin the unschooling process, so that I can do things like teach them how to whatever, they have a podcast. So I've taught them how to podcast, how to work with their virtual assistant, how to record, how to, upload things to the internet. I've taught them how to, do wilderness survival and build fires on their own and shoot bows and, start businesses like listing their room on Airbnb and taking photographs and greeting guests when the guests come and, doing all sorts of little things that they might not learn at school, from business building to outdoor creativity, to a lot of things that allow me to fill in the gaps. So I would say in an ideal scenario, you create a child who is a resilient free thinker who could, let's say, survive in a zombie apocalypse. But at the same time, you also expose them to some type of activity, even if that is a private school, for example, that teaches them how to play well with others. And I think by doing that, you can create a very well-rounded child, versus just say like, buying a curriculum and having them learn at the kitchen table and play with their very small subset of other homeschooling friends. I think that can create a child who is not quite socially prepared for, shall we say, the rural world.
Mm-hmm. No, I hear what you say, and that definitely is a particular issue, I guess, in the homeschool, and even people who look outside on the homeschooling world, saying that the children will be isolated, especially socially. So I think it's always interesting speaking to someone who's gone through the process like yourself, and you are an entrepreneur and you've managed to do all that you do. So I think it's a nice reference point for people to hear. So when it comes to stress management now, how do you manage the busyness of life? What you were telling me earlier about you actually do, workers play, players work. That already tells me that that's a way you don't get stressed, because to you, doing activity doesn't stress you because it's not seen as work. You're enjoying the activity that you do. So you're not maybe experiencing a bad stress in one sense. But do you find there's certain things that you like to do to just chill out or get yourself like in a good zone again?
Yeah, first of all, that whole work is play, play is work thing takes a strategy, meaning that, beginning about 10 years ago, I started outsourcing, right? So I hired my first virtual assistant from the Philippines. And when I didn't have time to, let's say, shop for an item online, or you create a spreadsheet of contacts for a specific list, let's say like a list of triathlon clubs or triathlon coaches for a product I would be creating for triathlon training, I would assign it to the VA. And by outsourcing, I was able to free up my time to do the things that I'm good at or the things that I love, which would be, in my case, writing, creating content, researching, and speaking, right? Like those are the things that I do well. And to a certain extent, you could also say competing, right? Like in some of the, like the obstacle course racing and triathlons and, things that do require, time for training. And so, after hiring a first virtual assistant, a decade ago, I've since rinsed, washed, and repeated that process to where, I don't mow my lawn. I don't do the laundry. I don't really clean anything. I don't take care of the pool. I don't plow our driveway, right? Like I've outsourced just about every aspect of life to free me up to do the things that I'm good at or the things that I enjoy. And there are when it comes to that concept of outsourcing, I mean, really the best way I can describe it is like when my wife and I were out to dinner a couple nights ago, we ask ourselves little questions like we'll use table topics questions, or we've got a great book we're going through right now called Seven Principles of a Highly Successful Marriage, I think is the title of that book. But part of it is when we go on dates, we just like we're not sitting there tapping away on our phones and just chatting about the kids or business or whatever. Like we go deep with questions to each other. And one of the questions we were going through was from this book. It was like, what household chore do you most dislike? It was a question approximately like that. And my wife's like, I think she said something like, filling the dishwasher. And it took me like 5 minutes of thinking and scratching my head. Finally, like, babe, I don't have any household chores. I'm like, I can't think of a single chore. And it's true. I just don't have any household chores because I've outsourced everything. I even have a girl who comes over to the house and goes to the mailbox and opens the mail and sets out anything that I need to see and throws out the other things and, scans the stuff that needs to be scanned and sent off to people. So, a big part of that work, play to work thing is really learning how to outsource, like a freaking champ, with probably Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week being like the book that first kind of launched, I guess, the worldwide interest in outsourcing among entrepreneurs. And now there's a variety of different ways to do it. But kind of coming out of that rabbit hole, to answer your question directly about stress management, some of the things that I do is I have a very distinct bookend each day, meaning that I guard heavily the first 90 minutes of my day, meaning from, let's say I get up at 6, I will not have anything scheduled until at least 8, right? Allowing me time for an hour and a half of anything from journaling to yoga to sauna to, cold soaks to foam roller work, to anything that allows me to just focus on me for that first little bit of the day, without needing to react to the whims of others. At the end of the day, I always have some kind of a way to duck into my office between about 6:30 and 8. Usually our family eats dinner around 8 p.m., a little bit late. But after I duck into the office then to put out any last remaining fires on email or blog posts or, finish up whatever I need to finish, at that point, it's a very distinct end of the day, after which, the only activities I'll do would be like playing guitar or ukulele or sitting in the sauna and reading fiction, or making love, or doing things that have nothing to do with work, but that allow you to de-stress. So I begin my day with some very intensive de-stressing activities and end my day, with that idea that, okay, work is definitely done. I'll go check emails after dinner, or pick up a book after dinner that has to do with my work, or, like exercise science research or something like that. So beginning and end of the day, I definitely ease into the day, and I finish the day with something very de-stressful rather than just having, some I guess, no distinct time of the day when work ends. I also, from a stress management standpoint, if we look at this, related to the title of your podcast, the Biohackers Lab, I would say 3 things that I do that aren't talked enough about in our community that wants to, pop phosphatidylcholine or phosphatidylserine or adaptogenic herbs for cortisol, or use like an electrostim device on the head to increase dopamine and serotonin and decrease cortisol. All these fancy biohacks. I'd say the three things that I focus on are number one, laughter, like really going out of your way every day uh, to either like talk to people about things that make us laugh, or to laugh at things. Like the last podcast that I did, me and the guy was podcast, we took up our shirts for the podcast. We were making jokes about nipples and not wearing your boxer, and just things that were just kind of funny, because I'm a big fan of laughter to de-stress and, bringing joy into people's lives to de-stress. And being outdoors, that's another big one. We've shown that the polyphenols and the scents from being outdoors can decrease cortisol. We know that the fresh air can decrease cortisol. I found a lot of people in the biohacking community just don't freaking get outdoors enough, right? Because they're buying indoor vitamin D tanning lamps and biological LED and HEPA air filters and all these things that make us feel like we could just like stay indoors all day long. But I think more biohackers just need to get outside. Speaking of which, I went camping with some biohackers at this biohacker summit in Finland, and you got all these people standing around who are trying to hack longevity, and who are optimizing air and light and water and electricity, and wearing self-quantification devices, but nobody knew how to start a fire, right? Or how to like pitch a tent in the wilderness. So yeah, I think this concept of being comfortable with being outdoors and surviving in the wilderness is something more people should tap into, as almost like a de-stressing activity. So being outdoors, laughter, and then breath work. Like I'm a huge fan of, I'll do like deep breathing, fire breathing, decompression breathing at the beginning of the day. When I go on walks, I'll do box breathing and hypoxic breathing. When I'm in the sauna, I'll do sometimes holotropic breathing. Or alternate nostril breathing. And when I'm laying in bed to go at night, I'll do like diaphragmatic breathing, belly breathing. So this concept of really using the ancestral idea of prana, right? Like of breath being life, to your advantage when it comes to constantly being mindful of one of the most potent ways to decrease cortisol. That's really important as well. So those would be a few things. And I mean, yeah, occasionally you do have to biohack, right? Like right now below me, as I'm walking on this treadmill, I have a cold air diffuser that is diffusing pine, right? Straight up at me as I'm talking to you. And so I'm getting some of those de-stressing benefits similar to if I were, doing the Japanese practice of Shinrin Yoku or forest bathing, right?
Yeah.
But I'm in my office and I'm walking on the treadmill instead. So I'm looking outside. You'll notice I'm not really looking at you while I'm talking as much as I'm kind of looking out the window, because out my window, I can see the trees and I can smell the pine. And so for me, my body is almost tricked right now into thinking that I'm outdoors wandering through the wilderness. So yeah, I mean, there are ways that we can hack some of these things as well. But yeah, those are some of the biggies. Beginning and ending the day with some sort of you time that allows you to just focus on you and not jumping into the fray of the matrix of bullets of emails coming out from your computer that you got to duck from. And then being outdoors, breath work, and laughter, right? Those are three things that I think are much, much better than any supplement or biohack that you could do.
Well, Ben, that's so refreshing to hear that, because I completely agree with you. It's the keep it simple, stupid concept. And that's the problem in our modern world sometimes, is that we've overcomplicated things. And as you said, something as basic as how to make a fire, a basic survival instinct, that we've kind of forgotten how to do something like that. And there's so many other health benefits that we don't need to, what's the word? Like in medicine where, I can't believe it's just dropped off my head. But instead of looking at the bigger picture, like when you're outside, there's not just one health benefit. There's so many things that happen just by placing yourself outdoors. Like there you go, that's an instant biohack that's going to improve your health. So I think those three. I think those three tips.
I think. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
It's silly to call that a biohack, right? Like like for me, I think a lot of what we call biohacking is silly to call biohacks, right? It's like, oh, I'm gonna go biohack my smoothie and put butter in it, or I'm gonna go biohack my sleep and wear a sleep mask. Like, no, that's not biohacking. That's just putting butter in the blender and making sure the room isn't too bright when you're asleep, right? To me, like biohacking is the dude who injects chlorella into his eyeballs for night vision,
Mm-hmm.
or Kevin Warwick and his wife who implant chips in their body to be able to communicate with one another, or the folks who use their bodies as wetware and external implants as hardware and do things like put magnets into their fingertips, right? Like or vagal pacemakers on the sides of their neck. So in my opinion, that's biohacking. I think we've gotten way too caught up in the modern healthy living movement, all these podcasters and authors and everybody talking about biohacking, when in fact, I would say 75% of what's called biohacking these days isn't actual biohacking, right? We're just using that sexy term to describe something that is just uh, that is just living, or that could be described using a much different, more appropriate term than biohacking, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
being outdoors. That's not a biohack, right? It's just being outdoors. So,
Yeah.
uh, so yeah, sorry to take us down that little rabbit hole, but
No, no,
yeah,
I like it that I found the raw nerve and we exposed it. So,
right,
yeah.
right,
No, but it is true. The original. If we had to look at the original terminology, it is the wetware and the grindware guys and the crazy things that they do to their bodies. And
right,
but I guess the word biohacking nowadays in the community has been softened to just, if you do something to try and improve your physiology, to try and improve your health. Like we could say, if you go to gym, some people might call that biohacking, but it's like, well, you're just actually going to gym, or you're just you're just moving just to keep your body well. Is that biohacking? No, you're just actually doing something the natural body should do. So you're not going
right,
to a crazy
exactly.
level. Yeah.
Yeah, and let's face it, the word biohacking just sounds cool, which I get, right? Like it's sexy,
Yeah.
for me to say I'm biohacking my sleep or I'm biohacking my exercise. So I get it, but at the same time, I have to name that I sometimes think we overuse the word.
Mm-hmm. And so that gets me also now into your gratitude journal. I wanted to touch on that because that's sort of a continuum of the stress management, or just the mental mindset. Would you mind just explaining what is a gratitude journal and why you created your gratitude journal?
Well, I don't want to kick the gratitude horse to death, but we do know that it can directly, when you name things that you are grateful for, or you conscientiously write down what you're thankful for, rather than just like feeling like that woo woo sense of gratitude, actually writing it down or saying it out loud. What happens is we see a distinct growth in the ability to be able to empathize with other people and increase in empathy during the day. We see better sleep, fewer doctor's visits, lower blood pressure, lower cortisol, a host of both physiological and psychological responses to gratitude that really do make it one of the most powerful emotions that you can consistently and should consistently tap into. Now, there are journals out there. There's many gratitude journals out there that you can buy, and they're very very similar between all of them. Right, you write down the 1, 3, 5 things that you're grateful for at the beginning or the end of each day. Now, as I would go through some of these journals over the past several years, many of them also have like your daily affirmation, right? Like your me, I. What am I going to accomplish each day? A lot of them have something that you're going to read, like some sort of a passage or inspirational quote. But I found a couple of things. A, it's super easy to skim over the reading or the quote and just like jump straight into gratitude. B, that whole idea of starting off the day with me, I. What am I going to accomplish? What's in it for me? I'm good. I'm great. I'm wonderful. And gosh darn it, people like me. The Saturday Night Live Stu Smalley quote. It it's a little bit selfish, right? Like it's really very, very self-facing, not very others-facing. And so, what I began to do a few years ago was I did a few things to hack this, shall we say? Um, I I I forced myself to write down what it was that I discovered, what truth I discovered from my reading or from the quotes that I was reading. Because I start off every day with reading something scriptural or devotional or woo woo or spiritual or something that doesn't have a lot to do with, exercise and health and fitness, but that is instead allowing me to tap into what I believe is the most important part of life, which is really your spirit, your soul, which is going to go on much, much longer after your body and your mind have rotted. And by knowing that I'm going to write down the one truth that I discovered from that day's reading, I read with far more mindfulness than I normally would. I don't tend to skim. I don't tend to sit there, squinting through my eye boogers, trying to just quickly read. Instead, I read with great conscientiousness and mindfulness. And then the other thing is that rather than writing down the thing that I'm going to accomplish that day or the thing that, my daily affirmation, I write down one person that I can serve or help or pray for that day. Like one person that I can go out of my way to be there for. And if you think about that, over 365 days of journaling, that's several hundred people that you could technically help each day, whether it's your neighbor and you're just going to go and perhaps bring them a treat after dinner or after breakfast, or you're going to call your grandma, or you're going to deliver some extra food in your pantry that you have to the local soup kitchen, on the way to or from work, right? Like any little thing like that, it adds up and it helps you to make the world a better place. And so that was my system for several years was, what's the truth that I discovered today? Who's one person I could pray for, help, or serve? And what am I grateful for? And last year, I decided to just take those three questions and turn them into an actual journal. Because the journal is heavily influenced by Christianity, I call it the Christian Gratitude Journal. And yeah, I basically produced it and made it into a journal. It's the same journal my wife and myself and my two 9-year-old boys. We use it every day. A lot of folks are using it now. And yeah, just did like a Kickstarter for it last year and got some steam. Enough people were interested in it where I decided to publish it. And yeah, and that's gratitude, and that's how I practice it each day.
Yeah, and I hear it more and more. As you said, it is getting spoken about a lot more, and it's interesting that writing down things it gives us that little bit of time to be conscious again. And that's what I'm hearing from you too, when you were saying that you allocate time in the beginning of your day and you end the day, and you have a cutoff period, that you're actually sort of allocating time for yourself. And that's a healthy thing to do, because you are, like, even with you speaking to me now, you're giving a part of your time to me to speak to me, but there's got to be time when you can just spend time with yourself and collect your thoughts, but then think, and do other things that stimulate your life. So it's nice to hear that it's, and most people, I haven't tried gratitude journaling yet myself, but everyone that I know who does it finds a lot of benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So with just with our last few minutes here, Ben, then I'd like to find out too, you touched on a little bit then with diet and how you keep it simple. That to me sounds fascinating in one sense, because you've experimented with a lot of different ways of eating over your time too. So having maybe tried lots of different types of diets or ways of eating, what have you found is maybe best for your system right now at your current age with your current lifestyle?
Yeah, I have experimented with a lot of different ways of eating. I can tell you the mouth works best. The ears, the anus, the nostrils, none of those seem to be able to chew food very well. So that's my first tip is when it comes to a way of eating, use your mouth. But seriously, what works best? Well, you have to figure out what works best for you, not what works best for Ben. Meaning that, in my opinion, everybody should get a very, very good gold standard, like antibody reaction to foods tests. Like I like the Cyrex panel, which we use over here in the US, which tests your body's reaction to both the raw and the cooked versions of a protein, not just the raw version, which a lot of labs do, right? Like they'll test like your white blood cells reaction to raw eggs. And if they see a reaction, they're like, oh, you're allergic to eggs. Well, a lot of people can't handle raw eggs, but you just find cooked eggs. The same thing for chicken or other compounds. Like a really good food allergy panel. I really like a genetic test, not only to see what your ancestors ate, but to see if you have specific genetic SNPs responsible for, let's say, you've got the ApoE44 gene, and you're homozygous on that one, and therefore you would tend to oxidize cholesterol or store very, very large levels of cholesterol, have an increase in cholesterol particle count in response to a ketogenic diet. There's another gene defect on, I think, one of the PPAR genes that would be responsible for this as well, in which case the same ketogenic diet that works really well for your neighbor, for you, would cause inflammation and increased risk for cardiovascular disease, right? And so perhaps a more Katavan-based, fiber-rich, starch-rich diet would be the correct choice for you. I also think everybody should do like a really good comprehensive blood panel and a good comprehensive gut panel, again, to determine what foods may or may not agree with you. Do you have bacterial overgrowth? In which case, maybe kombucha and red wine wouldn't be up your alley, although they'd work just fine for someone who may not have, bacterial overgrowth. Or do you have vitamin D levels that are, let's say, at 70 or 80, in which case excessive vitamin D supplementation at, let's say 4,000 international units a day for you might increase calcium deposition in the arteries and cause arterial calcification, whereas for someone with vitamin D levels at, say, 30, it would not cause that issue. So we live in an era where you can self-quantify to determine what diet is right for you, rather than just looking at what diet is working for your favorite author or biohacker or podcast or whatever. Mm-hmm. Now, that being said, what personally works really well for me is, especially for my levels of physical activity, not only the reduction in excessive diet variability that we talked about earlier, right? Like reducing decision-making fatigue by keeping many of my meals, while nutrient dense, relatively consistent up until dinner, at which point dinner is the meal that will become a little bit more random. And then also, I do cyclic ketosis, meaning that I really don't eat any carbs until the very end of the day. And up until that point, most of my diet is extremely plant-rich, with small amounts of fats and small amounts of protein. And then at the end of the day, when I have finished a workout, I'm very insulin sensitive, my glucose transporter genes are activated, that's when I will consume carbohydrates ad libitum, like anywhere from 100 to 200 grams of tubers or sweet potatoes or yams or red wine or dark chocolate or whatever. So this idea of cyclic ketosis, cycling in and out of ketosis. In addition to that, I'll do every week or two a 24-hour fast for a little bit of better apoptosis, better cellular cleanup, a little bit of a break for the gut. And generally, as far as the actual foods that I choose, I don't restrict dairy, I don't restrict grains, I don't restrict legumes. All I do is ensure that they are prepared properly. So I'm going to have quinoa, it's got to be soaked and rinsed well. Or if I have lentils, typically only if they're sprouted or fermented do I do very well with them. Or if I'm going to do, let's say dairy, right? Typically for me, it needs to be either raw dairy or fermented dairy. So I suppose if you were to paint my diet into any pretty little corner, it'd be something very similar like the Weston A. Price Foundation type of diet. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'd say a Weston A. Price-ish form of eating in a very cyclic ketogenic form with good amounts of self-quantification so that I know what gaps need to be filled in and any foods that need to be avoided would pretty much describe my overall dietary philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a very sound philosophy. And as you said, we're all unique. We've all experienced life in a different way. Our physiology is different. Our microbiome is different. So you're going to have different reactions to different food types. So you just have to trial and error and even get as in-depth in looking at your genetics. And I think you would need someone like you to help counsel them through some of that, would they?
Yeah, thanks for the plug. That's what I do.
Of course, man. It's I think that's why people love you, Ben, because you have such a wide array of knowledge that you're able to suggest many possible routes to look at to try help someone on their own personal journey with whatever they're trying to achieve in life. So I think that's fantastic. Um, how best would people? I mean, I know how to follow you, but someone who doesn't know Ben Greenfield, what would be the best ways to keep up to date with you?
I send out a newsletter every week from my website at bengreenfieldfitness.com. Like Fridays, I do a weekly roundup that kind of aggregates everything I've talked about from podcasts I've been on or recorded myself to articles I've written or contributed to other sites to typically I'll put in there the latest biohacks or foods or books or supplements that I've been experimenting with. So subscribing to the newsletter over at bengreenfieldfitness.com would probably be the best way to really stay tuned to all the content I'm putting out.
Yeah, because you're a machine, man. You pump out some content like anything. It's incredible. And same with your podcast. Anyone who's listening to this, your podcast is a fantastic resource too to subscribe to and listen to. So Ben, I just want to say thank you so much for giving me your time today and sharing some great personal insights, and I think some real basic health advice that anyone could take action using today, which is exactly what the show is about: listening to what someone says and taking action today.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me on.